السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. نرجو من الحضور الكريم الوقوف للنشيد الوطني. أصحاب السعادة الدكتور عزمي بشارة رئيس مجلس أمناء معهد الدوحة للدراسات العليا ونائب الرئيس وأعضاء المجلس، السيد رئيس المعهد والسادة العمداء والأساتذة، الحضور الكريم، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. معكم رائد حبايب مدير إدارة الأبحاث والمنح في المعهد، ويسعدني ويشرفني أن أرحب بكم جميعا في هذه المناسبة التي نحتفي فيها بالذكرى العاشرة لتأسيس معهد الدوحة للدراسات العليا. ويسعدنا أن تجمعنا هذه القاعة اليوم بعدد من الكوادر الأكاديمية والإدارية التي واكبت المعهد منذ بدايته وأسهمت في مسيرته جنبا إلى جنب مع أساتذته وطلابه وخريجيه وأصدقائه من داخل قطر وخارجها. 10 سنوات قد تبدو قصيرة في عمر المؤسسات الأكاديمية، ولكن ما أنجز خلال هذه الفترة يشعرنا بالفخر ويدعونا للتأمل. لقد بدأ المعهد رحلته هنا في الدوحة برؤية طموحة تنبع من إيمان دولة قطر بدور التعليم في نهضة الأمة العربية ودعمها المستمر لتوفير البيئة الحاضنة لتمكين المؤسسات التعليمية. وفي فترة وجيزة استطاع المعهد أن يرسخ لنفسه مكانة مؤثرة محليا وإقليميا قائمة على تكامل التعليم والتعلم مع البحث العلمي والمساهمة العربية في الإنتاج المعرفي والانفتاح والتفاعل مع محيطه الاجتماعي. لقد أصبح معهد الدوحة للدراسات العليا من أهم الجامعات الناشئة في قطر والعالم العربي، يحظى بإقبال الطلاب المتميزين ويجتمع فيه الباحثون من مختلف البلدان لتبادل الخبرات وإنتاج معرفة تخدم قضايا مجتمعاتهم وتطلعاتهم المستقبلية. خلال عقد واحد أنشأ المعهد 18 برنامج ماجستير و8 للدكتوراه، وتخرج منه أكثر من 1600 طالب وطالبة، كما أسهم المعهد في إصدار أكثر من 1000 منشور علمي، وهذه إنجازات تجسد رسالته في إنتاج المعرفة وتعزيز تأثيرها محليا وعالميا. نعبر في هذه المناسبة عن تقديرنا لكل من أسهم في بناء هذا الصرح من أساتذة وموظفين وطلبة وداعمين آمنوا برسالة المعهد وسعوا إلى تحقيقها بإخلاص وعزيمة. ونتطلع في هذا اليوم الاحتفالي إلى مستقبل مزدهر لمعهدنا العزيز والمزيد من الإنجازات والتقدم خدمة لمجتمعه المحلي وسعيا للإسهام في تعزيز مكانة قطر والعالم العربي في الفضاء الفكري والمعرفي. نستهل برنامج الفعاليات لهذا اليوم بكلمة افتتاحية يلقيها الدكتور عبد الوهاب الأفندي رئيس معهد الدوحة للدراسات العليا، وتليها جلستين حواريتين بمشاركة نخبة من المفكرين والقادة الأكاديميين من مختلف أنحاء العالم لمناقشة مواضيع حيوية متعلقة بالتعليم العالي في ظل التطورات الراهنة. والآن يسعدني أن أقدم لكم تعريفا موجزا عن الدكتور عبد الوهاب الأفندي. التحق الدكتور عبد الوهاب بالمعهد في سنة التأسيس في 2015 كأستاذ العلوم السياسية ورئيسا لبرنامج السياسة والعلاقات الدولية في كلية العلوم الاجتماعية والإنسانية، ثم عين عميدا للكلية عام 2017 قبل أن يتولى رئاسة المعهد في 2020. قبل ذلك عمل الدكتور عبد الوهاب أستاذا في مركز دراسات الديمقراطية بجامعة ويستمنستر في لندن، وشغل في مناصب تدريسية وبحثية عديدة في جامعات ومؤسسات مختلفة حول العالم تشمل جامعة أوكسفورد وجامعة كامبريدج، جامعة نورث ويسترن، ومعهد كريستيان ميكلسون، والمعهد العالمي للفكر والحضارة الإسلامية. نال الدكتور عبد الوهاب زمالة مدى الحياة في الجمعية الملكية لتشجيع الفنون والصناعة والتجارة، وهو أيضا زميل في منتدى سالزبورغ العالمي. يسرنا أن ندعو الدكتور عبد الوهاب لإلقاء كلمته الترحيبية، فليتفضل مشكورا.
شكرا للزميل رايد. سعادة الدكتورة مريم بنت علي بن ناصر المسند، وزيرة الدولة للتعاون الدولي، أصحاب السعادة، السيد رئيس مجلس أمناء المعهد معهد الدوحة الدكتور عزمي بشارة، ونائب الرئيس علي بن عبد الله بن علي الثاني، وأعضاء المجلس الكرام، الحضور الكريم، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أسمى آيات الترحيب بكم جميعا باسمي وباسم رئيس وأعضاء مجلس أمناء المعهد وكافة أعضاء أسرة المعهد. عندما تحلقت مجموعة صغيرة من الأكاديميين في مقر المركز العربي للأبحاث ودراسة السياسات في خريف عام 2011 لدراسة فكرة جريئة حول إنشاء مؤسسة جامعية جديدة عالية الطموح، لم يكن من السهولة تصور ما وصلت إليه هذه الفكرة في الواقع اليوم. كانت الفكرة التي طرحها المدير العام للمركز الدكتور عزمي بشارة متعددة الأبعاد، تتمحور حول مؤسسة جامعية للدراسات العليا عالمية المستوى وعربية الهوى. وبعد سلسلة مشاورات استغرقت عاما كاملا وشارك فيها عشرات الأكاديميين العرب من داخل الوطن العربي وخارجه، تبلورت ملامح المشروع حول الآتي: إنشاء معهد يصبح مركزا للدراسة والتعلم والبحث، وملتقى للأكاديميين العرب وطلابهم وشركائهم من الشرق والغرب، على أن تكون العربية هي لغة التدريس والإنجليزية اللغة الأولى الداعمة لجهود البحث والتدريس. اتفق أيضا على يكون البحث رائد التعليم ودليله كما هو ثمرته ونتاجه، وأن يكون التركيز التخصصي رديفا لتكامل التخصصات، فلا يهمل الطالب التعمق في تخصصه العلمي ولا يتقوقع في التخصص غافلا عن ثمرات العلوم الأخرى. وخلال الأعوام من نهايات 2013 إلى بدايات 2015 بدأت هذه الأفكار تتحول إلى واقع بسرعة مذهلة. وضعت الخطط لبناء المعهد على طراز معماري فريد، وجرى العمل على تصميم الهياكل الأكاديمية والإدارية، وتم تحديد الكليات والبرامج وإعداد معظم المقررات وتعيين عمداء الكليات واستقطاب الكوادر الأكاديمية، بما في ذلك تعيين رؤساء البرامج. وعندما وفدنا إلى الدوحة نحن ممن كنا من طلائع الكوادر التدريسية في صيف عام 2015، واتخذنا من فيلا من طابقين مقرا صباحيا كنا ننتقل منه عصرا إلى قاعات التدريس في جامعة قطر التي مشكورة زودتنا بهذه القاعات. فقد اتخذ كل منا مكانه في الفيلا التي ضجت بالحيوية رغم ازدحامها، بما في ذلك أي ركن يتوفر في مكتب أو في الممرات أو بجوار بركة السباحة وفي بعض المقاهي القريبة. ولاحظنا بسرعة كيف أخذت روح المشروع تسري في الجميع، وليس في ذلك من عجب، فمن منا لم يكن يحلم إذا كان من الصامدين في عالمنا العربي أو من هاجر أو هجر بإمكانية وجود جامعة في قلب عالمنا العربي تجمع بين تجسيد الحلم العربي في خدمة مجتمعاتنا العربية وبين إمكانية التسامي إلى قمة التميز، وأن تجد الاحتضان من مجتمع فتي كريم يدعم مشروعها الطموح ويحميه وييسر له البيئة المناسبة في بلد جعل التميز في العلم غاية الغايات في مشروعه النهضوي. ويحق لنا هنا أن نستعير بيتي الشاعر ويليام وورdsworth في ترحيبه بالثورة الفرنسية: Bliss was it on that dawn to be alive, but to be young was very heavy. ونعدل فيها قليلا نقول: يا لها من بهجة في ذلك الفجر أن تكون حيا، أما أن تكون في قلب ذلك المشروع فذلك نعيم الفردوس بعينه. أذكر أنه في أول فصل في برنامج العلوم السياسية درسنا فيه كان عدد طلاب 13، من بينهم 6 كانوا يتناوبون قصب السبق، منهم طالب قطري وآخر بلغاري وثالث سوري ورابع قطرية وسادس من إستونيا. كان الطالب القطري ملفتا للنظر لأنه كان يعمل بدوام كامل ولديه أسرة فيها أطفال صغار، وكثيرا ما كان يعطى مهام في خارج البلاد، ولكنه مع ذلك ظل يتفوق إذا ساهم شفاهة أو قدم تكليفا، وهو الآن كما هو متوقع في موقع يعني رفيع في الدولة. أما البلغاري فكان إذا تحدث بالعربية في الفصل أخجل كثيرا من طلابنا العرب، وكان يعمل معي مساعد باحث، فكنت إذا طلبت منه مراجع لورقة أو كتاب أعمل عليه حتى لو كان بعيدا عن تخصصه مثل موضوع الاستعمار البريطاني في السودان أو الثورات العربية أو النظرية السياسية، كان يزودني بما أطلب خلال أيام معدودة، غالبا مع ملفات PDF. ولوجود الشابين الأوروبيين في المعهد قصة: استقدم للقبول في الفوج الأول، أحدهما في قطر والثاني من الكويت، وكنت ممن عارض قبولهما بحجة أنهما من دول الاتحاد الأوروبي حيث لا يعدمان الخيارات هناك، والأفضل أن نحتفظ بالأماكن لطلاب قطر والمنطقة. ولكن عندما لم نجد العدد الكافي للمؤهلين قبلناهم ولم نندم، فقد كان أضاف حيوية إلى الفصل ورفع من مستواه. يجب أن نضيف أن الطالب السوري هو الآن أيضا وزير في بلده. أما الطالب الإستوني فقد أصبح دبلوماسيا كبيرا في دولته، آخر مرة سمعت به كان في نيويورك. هذه التجربة كلها كانت مغامرة، فلم يكن مضمونا أن يجد المعهد أساتذة يجيدون العربية ولهم تجربة في جامعات عربية أو أجنبية مهمة، ولهم أبحاث منشورة في منابر مهمة في التخصص، وفي نفس الوقت لهم الالتزام بمشروع عربي يطالبهم بالكثير. ورغم أننا توقعنا إقبالا أكثر من الطلاب بسبب ما يقدمه المعهد من مزايا، إلا أن هذا لم يتحقق تلقائيا، واكتشفنا أننا لا ننافس فقط الجامعات العربية والجامعات الأجنبية التي تكاثرت في المنطقة، بل كذلك الجامعات الأجنبية الأهم في مواقعها، خاصة في الخليج، حيث البعثات الخارجية متاحة بصورة شبه تلقائية للمتميزين، ونحن طبعا نطلب المتميزين. ومن جهة أخرى ظلت هذه المنطقة تواجه الأزمات بعد الأزمات، فقد نضجت فكرة المعهد مع نسمات ربيع العرب الأولى، وافتتح المعهد مع نكسات الثورات العربية التي كانت بدورها نكبة على جامعات المنطقة. واجهنا بعد ذلك حرب اليمن وأزمة حصار قطر وأزمات سوريا والعراق والسودان وليبيا، وأخيرا حملة الإبادة في غزة وحرب التوسع الإسرائيلية التي مسنا منها شرر وصواريخ. مع ذلك فإن المعهد ظل يتطور ويواجه التحديات ويتعلم من التجارب، ويعزز من صلابته في وجه التحديات، وذلك بتقوية مؤسساته وتطويرها واجتذاب الكوادر المتميزة وحسن التدريب والتأهيل والحصول على الاعتمادات الدولية وتعزيز الشراكات داخل قطر. ويسرني في هذا المجال أن أذكر الرعيل الأول الذي ساهم معنا وقاد البحث في فترات، منهم الدكتور ياسر سليمان، الدكتور عبد الرحيم بن حدة، الدكتور حسن علي، الدكتور رشيد العناني الذي حبسه حابس من الحضور. ظل المعهد ينمو أيضا باستمرار من حيث عدد البرامج وتنوعها، فبينما بدأ سنة الافتتاح ب9 برامج، 7 في كلية العلوم الاجتماعية والإنسانية و2 في كلية الإدارة واقتصادات التنمية التي أصبح الآن اسمها اقتصاد والسياسات العامة، والاقتصاد والإدارة والسياسات العامة، فإن عدد البرامج ارتفع حاليا إلى 15 في الكلية الأولى و6 في الثانية، بمجموعه 23 من البرامج. أطلقنا برنامج الدكتوراه في عام 2021، بدأنا بقبول ثلاث طالبات، ولدينا الآن 21 من الطلاب والطالبات، وسيشهد الفصل القادم إن شاء الله تخرج أولى طالباتنا من برنامج اقتصادات التنمية. ارتفع عدد المقبولين من 122 في العام الأول ليصبح هذا العام 334، وقد اضطررنا لهذا السبب لتوفير سكن خارج المعهد لقرابة 90 من الطلاب. وكان السبب لهذا التحسن المتزايد هو التحسن في نوعية المتقدمين، مع ملاحظة لا تقل أهمية، وهي موقع الجامعات التي يأتي منها هؤلاء الطلاب. فخلال ال3 سنوات الماضية لاحظنا أن عدد الجامعات التي يأتي منها الطلاب بين 145 إلى 155. هذا العام كانت 155، وهي ربع هؤلاء المقبولين يأتي من جامعات من شمال أمريكا أو أمريكا الشمالية ومن دول الاتحاد الأوروبي. وإذا أضفنا إلى هؤلاء طلاب تركيا وشرق أوروبا والصين والهند فإن النسبة تزيد كثيرا. نلاحظ مثلا أن طلابنا جاءوا من جامعات مثل جامعة كاليفورنيا لوس أنجليس وسيتي يونيفرسيتي اوف نيويورك وجامعة كولورادو، ثم جامعة يورك وليس في بريطانيا، وجامعة برلين الحرة، وجامعة جنوب أستراليا، وهذا يعني تعديد. هذا يعني أن التنافس لم يعد مع الجامعات العربية ولا حتى مع جامعات المدينة التعليمية هنا أو الجامعات الأمريكية في بيروت والقاهرة، بل مع جامعات أمريكية وأوروبية في عقر دارها، علما بأن آخر إحصائية اطلعت عليها تذكر أن كاليفورنيا بها 400 جامعة. وطبعا يعني جامعة كاليفورنيا طبعا من أرفعها مستوى عالميا وأمريكيا. هناك عدد مماثل، والولايات المتحدة بها 6000 جامعة، وهناك عدد مماثل في أوروبا. فعندما يقرر طلاب من تلك البلاد شد الرحال وضرب أكباد الطائرات إلى الدوحة ومعهدها، في حين أن الهجرة من عندنا من كل بقاع العالم وجهتها هو في الاتجاه المعاكس، فإن هذا أمر له دلالته. أيضا يستوقفني عدد الجامعات هذا لأذكر شيئا آخر، أن هذا العام 69% من منشورات طلابنا كانت في دوريات Q1، دوريات الربع الأول. هذه الدوريات يتسابق عليها الطلاب من هذه 12,000 جامعة، ونحن حاولنا أن نقارن بين نسبة المقبول أوراقهم من عندنا ونسبة المقبولين في الجامعات الأخرى، فوجدنا أن الجامعات لا تقدم هذه المعلومات. لكن المهم نحن عندنا 80 أستاذ فقط، وهناك 12,000 جامعة وأساتذتنا ينشرون في هذه هذا شيء ليس بسيط. يذكر بذكر المنافسة المحلية إن الجامعة الأمريكية في بيروت كانت الرابعة في القبول عندنا هنا في 24 حيث قبل منها في المعهد 13 طالب. هذا العام هي الخامسة. في الأول هي كانت بعد جامعة قطر. جامعة قطر طبعا دائما الأولى، ثم جامعة محمد السادس. هذا العام هي نمرة 5 أيضا بعد جامعة قطر وجامعة الأزهر والجامعة الأردنية ب10 طلاب. أما جامعة القاهرة، الجامعة الأمريكية في القاهرة، وين الدكتور أحمد دلال، فقبل منها 2 فقط هذا العام. هذا يدل أن هذه الجامعة عندها مشكلة كبيرة. ولا يقل أهمية عن هذا برامج التبادل الطلابي، فهي في نظري تمثل درجة أعلى من الاعتماد. فإن تقرر جامعة مرموقة أن تبعث بطلابها للدراسة في المعهد وتحتمل المقررات التي حصلوا عليها في تسجيل هذه الجامعة، فهذا تأكيد منها ومن النظام الوطني فيها والأوروبي في حالة دول الاتحاد الأوروبي بالندية مع المعهد. ولن أنهي قبل التطرق إلى برنامج زمالة الدوحة الذي يديره مركز اللغات في المعهد، ويقبل في كل فصل منه مجموعة صغيرة من الطلاب حول العالم عددهم أقل من 10، ويقبل هؤلاء تنافسيا ويتحملون أو تتحمل جامعاتهم التكلفة ما عدا السكن، ويتلقون دروسا في اللغة كما يسمح لهم بحضور مقررات في تخصصاتهم بصفة مستمعين. وأصبح هؤلاء سفراء للمعهد وبعضهم تقدم للدراسة فيه. هذا العام الذين جاءوا من اليابان ومن البرازيل ومن أمريكا طبعا من الولايات المتحدة ومن باريس نانتير ومن سويسرا ومن فرنسا الجزائر وهكذا. كذلك أختم أيضا بقصة إحدى طالبات التبادل التي جاءتنا العام الماضي من جامعة كوفسكاري من البندقية في إيطاليا. فقد كنا قبلنا طالبتين من تلك الجامعة ضمن عملية التبادل معها في إطار نظام إراسموس للتبادل. الأولى حضرت الفصل الأول والثانية قبلت للفصل الثاني، إلا أن الطالبة الأولى بعد التوافق مع جامعتها على ذلك طلبت أن تستمر للفصل الثاني أيضا. دعوت الطالبة لأستفسر منها عن الأمر، فكان معظم حديثها في المقابلة وهو بلسان عربي مبين كيف سحرها المعهد وسعدت بوجودها فيه وما لقيته من دعم وما لقته من تعاون من الطلاب والأساتذة. وأبلغتني أنها طلبت من جامعتها إلغاء ترتيب سابق للتبادل والبقاء في المعهد، وطلبت أن بالطبع وافقنا على طلبها. خلال هذا الشهر أيضا تلقينا طلبا لا يغل غرابة من طالبة أخرى من نفس جامعة كوفسكاري لم تحصل على تمويل من إراسموس، لكنها طلبت أن يسمح لها بالحضور الفصل القادم على نفقتها. بالطبع قبلنا طلبها أيضا. أكرر شكري لحضوركم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
شكرا جزيلا دكتور عبد الوهاب. والآن من دواعي سروري أن أقدم لكم الجلسة الحوارية الأولى لهذا اليوم بعنوان تبادل المعرفة والتعليم العالي في عالم متغير. تدير الجلسة الدكتورة أمل غزال عميدة كلية العلوم الاجتماعية والإنسانية في معهد الدوحة، ويشارك فيها الدكتور أحمد دلال من الجامعة الأمريكية في القاهرة، الدكتور ليونارد وانشيكون من جامعة برينستون، الدكتور ييجيا جينغ من جامعة فودان، والدكتور عبد الوهاب الأفندي رئيس معهد الدوحة. فليتفضلوا مشكورين.
conducting our 2 sessions in English. We meet at a time when higher education worldwide is undergoing transformations that are both deep and rapid. Universities everywhere are being reshaped by digital technologies, artificial intelligence, shifting demographics, financial pressures, and the growing demands for relevance and impact. Alongside these structural shifts, political forces have re-entered the university in powerful and troubling ways. Universities have always stood at the intersection of knowledge and power. But what distinguishes the present moment is the unprecedented intensity and the immediacy of these pressures. Today, the convergence of political, economic, and technological forces is redefining how universities function, how they maintain and define their autonomy, and what governments and societies expect from them. Nowhere has this convergence been more starkly revealed than in the wake of the genocide in Gaza, which has exposed and deepened long-standing fault lines within a global academia. It has reminded us that universities are deeply entangled in politics through their research partnerships, technological innovations, and endowment investments that link campuses to the infrastructures of war and surveillance. Across universities, these entanglements have reignited debates over academic freedom and the ethics of funding. While scholars have faced censor, student protests have been suppressed, and institutional responses have tested the moral duty of higher education. Gaza reminds us that political crises are also moral ones, testing the foundations of an academy that claims liberal values, and showing that universities are judged not only by what they teach and research, but what they stand for and their willingness to speak truth to power. While universities elsewhere have faced crises of confidence and purpose, higher education in the Arab Gulf has followed a different path, one of growth, investment, and ambitious reform. Over the past 2 decades, Gulf national visions have placed knowledge and the human capital at the center of diversification and development, turning Gulf universities into engines of change, strengthening governance, expanding bilingual education, and aligning research with national priorities. As it marks its 10th anniversary, the Doha Institute for Graduate Studies embodies these new directions, locally rooted yet globally connected, placing Arabic at the core of its mission and reaffirming it as a living medium of research, critique, and knowledge production. The questions the Institute raises about identity, language, and purpose resonate across the region, where Gulf universities are increasingly poised to play a greater intellectual and institutional role. How they navigate this moment will shape their leadership within regional and global academia and determine how higher education serves as strategic leverage in an evolving geopolitical order in which the Gulf plays a central and a growing role. Taken together, these currents regarding politics, technology, finances, etc., bring us to the heart of our session's theme, knowledge exchange in a changing world. How knowledge is produced, shared, and valued amid shifting global realities, and how we might build more equitable and meaningful forms of collaboration across regions. With that, I'm pleased to begin our conversation with our distinguished panelists. Thank you all for being with us today. I'll introduce our 4 panelists first, and then I'll ask the first question. And then we'll have a second round and maybe a third round.
No, definitely third round.
A third?
Yes.
قادر. 4. كمان إذا بدك. Dr. Ahmed Dallal is the 13th president of the American University in Cairo and a distinguished scholar with extensive higher education experience in the United States and the Arab region. He previously served as Dean of Georgetown University in Qatar and as Provost of the American University of Beirut. A leading scholar of Islamic studies, he has taught at the American University of Beirut, Stanford, Yale, Smith College, and Georgetown, where he chaired the Department of Arabic and Islamic Studies. Under his leadership, the American University in Cairo has advanced institutional transformation, research excellence, and equitable access to education. An engineer by training, President Dallal holds a Bachelor in Mechanical Engineering from the American University of Beirut and an MA, MPhil, and PhD in Islamic Studies from Columbia University. His scholarship on learning, science, and thought in medieval and early modern Islamic societies has received wide international recognition. Always a pleasure to have you with us. Dr. Leonard Wanchikun is the James Madison Professor of Political Economy and Professor of Politics and International Affairs at Princeton University. He is the founder and the president of the African School of Economics and the Pan-African Scientific Research Council. He earned his PhD in economics from Northwestern University and previously taught at Yale and New York University. His research focuses on political economy, development economics, and economic history, with a regional focus on Africa and a methodological emphasis on experimentation, with a capital E. His work explores democracy and development, education and social mobility, and the long-term social impacts of slavery and colonial rule. Professor Wanchikun is the 2023 recipient of the Global Economy Prize from the Kiel Institute for the World Economy, a fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences and the Econometric Society. He has served also as vice president of the American Political Science Association and on the executive committee of the International Economic Association. Welcome to Doha, and welcome to the Doha Institute for Graduate Studies.
Thank you.
And then Dr. Ijia Jing is a Chang Jiang Scholar and Seeker Chan Chair, Professor in Public Management at Fudan University, where he serves as Dean of the Institute for Global Public Policy, co-director of the LSE Fudan Research Center for Global Public Policy, and director of the Fudan Arab Research Center for Global Development and Governance. He's also vice president of the International Research Society for Public Management and founding president of the China Arab Network of Schools for Public Policy and Administration, promoting academic cooperation between China and the Arab region. Dr. Jing earned his BA and MA in economics from Peking University, an MA in sociology from the University of Maryland, and a PhD in public policy from the Ohio State University. His research focuses on privatization, governance, social organizations, and collaborative service delivery, and has appeared in his research has appeared in leading journals such as Public Administration Review. This is your third trip to the Doha Institute. I welcome you again and again.
Thank you.
Last but not least, Dr. Abdul Wahab Al-Afandi. I only say he, okay, that's in English. All right. He has served as president and provost of the Doha Institute for Graduate Studies since 2020. Is that enough? Okay. All right. I'll begin our conversation, and I'll start with you, President Dallal. You've held leadership roles at several major universities, and now you lead one of the region's oldest and one of the most globally connected institutions.
I'm problematic ones.
Sorry?
I'm one of the problematic ones.
Yes,
From your perspective.
very deficient in some complete area.
What are the most significant changes transforming higher education today? And how are these changes shaping universities in the Arab region, in particular, if you would like to focus on the Arab region? I'm not going to put restrictions on how you want to frame this. Thank you.
Thank you for the kind introduction. بداية السلام عليكم وعذرا على الحديث باللغة الإنجليزية لصالح الزملاء المشاركين في الجلسة. Let me start by thanking the organizers of this conference. It's an honor to participate with the colleagues on this panel, and of course, congratulations to the institute, to the Doha Institute, for 10 years of distinguished achievements. In short 10 years, 10 years is nothing really in the history of institutions. In short 10 years, the Doha Institute has really established itself as a beacon of intellectual activity. I know from the inside we're always trying to do better and so on. but the Institute has really distinguished itself, and congratulations to everyone who participated in this effort, to the current community, to the former leadership of the Institute. Okay, you promised me that there'll be 3 rounds, so I'm counting on that. Higher education, as several colleagues have already noted, is navigating a complex and rapidly changing landscape. Many of these challenges are not unique to our region, just to address the question that you raised. Of course, specific ways these challenges manifest themselves in different localities does change from place to place. But there are many things which are common trends, and I think it's useful to also consider these common trends. And forgive me for talking about challenges. It's not that I'm pessimistic, but I think if we want to work on the future, we need to address very clearly and you know, with clarity, we need to understand the sorts of challenges we need to overcome. I will not attempt in my remarks to provide a comprehensive list of challenges. I really don't want to. I'm notorious. I speak a lot. I don't want to monopolize the conversation, but I'm happy to engage in multiple, and I'm counting on 2 more rounds after this one. I will focus on some of the most pressing challenges, underscoring both global and local trends affecting today's higher education. The first challenge goes without saying, and anyone who's working in higher education or in any institutional framework is a financial challenge. We are always trying to struggle with financial challenges, and we're trying to make ends meet, as it were. And these challenges result from, and I'll just list some, I'll be happy to elaborate on any if you want me to. In general, in higher education institutions, in general, not everywhere, there is a decline in enrollment. In the US, there is a decline in enrollment, even in national public universities, not just in private universities. Of course, if you talk about the national universities in Egypt, for example, it's the exact opposite. In Egypt, the national universities have to accommodate an increasing number of students who want to study and so on. But the general trend, especially in institutions that charge fees or institutions that support themselves through tuition and so on, the general trend is a decrease and decline in enrollment. Again, I'm highlighting some of the key things, and I'm drawing on my own experience and from what I am aware of in other institutions. The steadily rising cost of digital technologies is a major factor in the increase of cost and the financial challenge that institutions are facing. We all were under the impression that digital technologies will enable us to reduce the cost. The reality is the cost keeps on going up and up and up. We were promised that the cloud will be a more cost-effective way of instead of using our own servers and whatever. As it turns out, the charges, the subscriptions, and so on keep on increasing because you're a captive audience when you move to the cloud. I mean, everything. There are new systems, there are new challenges, and I'll be happy to talk about some of these later if you want me to. Regulation. Higher education institutions used to be simple institutions. Now the regulation requirements, both within the countries in which they operate and international regulation, including accreditation and so on and so forth, is a major significant additional cost to the operation of higher education. And we need to, I underscore this because we need to balance the quality of education with fiscal responsibility. This is a task for all of us, and this is the first challenge, I think. And I'll be happy to elaborate if you want me to on this issue. The second major issue is that student expectations in today's universities are transforming, they're changing. There are many working students who demand flexible delivery modes, who also demand continuing education modalities. They're working, the makeup, the constituency, the students who are studying in today's world are very different from students who used to study previously. And also the cost of higher education globally, even in institutions which are nationally supported, where education is free, but the cost of education on the institution itself is increasing. And of course, there are increasing number of students who are graduating with a massive debt, and they live the rest of their life dealing with this debt. This is another. There are also expectations of services in today's universities. For example, mental support It was unthinkable 20 years ago. No institutions provided, support. Now we all have to provide, and it's a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but there are increasing expectations and there are increasing demands, and these demands are of course have come with a cost. A third major challenge is the rising social pressure and skepticism about the value of higher education. There is, people everywhere are questioning whether it's worth it to pursue a university degree, to graduate with a massive debt that will burden you for the rest of your life. In many cases, as you know, in some of our regional countries, the most unemployed are the PhD holders. So the more degrees you get, the less chances that you get for employment and so on and so forth. There is a, as a result, there is an understandable questioning of the value of higher education amongst students, amongst their families and supporters and so on. Many students choose to pursue alternative pathways such as trade schools, apprenticeships, online education, and so on and so forth. The point that I'm trying to make is higher education institutions today must actively demonstrate their value to students. Again, this was taken for granted previously. Of course, you pursue an education. It's not to be taken for granted. And now you have to convince students of the value of the education that you're providing them. This didn't used to be the case 20 or 30 years ago. It's certainly the case today. This includes, so we need to demonstrate the value of higher education to our students, to their families, to employers, because employers have demands also. And I'll talk about some of these demands later in the second round when we talk about AI. And we have to align the curricula with labor market demands and with service to society. This is also a major challenge for higher education institutions. We cannot continue to do. Academic institutions are amongst the most conservative institutions globally. They're very slow to change. And this contributes to excellence within the institutions. People reflect on things they do, they take their time. We cannot afford to do that anymore. We have to move because the demands of our societies, the questioning from our students are moving extremely fast, and we need to be flexible, we need to be agile, and we need to be able to address these issues. What all of this means is that we need to innovate both in terms of the types of programs we offer, in terms of the relevance of these programs, their up-to-datedness, I don't know if this is a word, the programs, we need to think about what the programs of the future should look like. And we also need to embed competencies in the curriculum. Everyone talks about the competency approach to education, but what that exactly means is a complete challenge. It's the skill sets that you equip your students with in addition, so it's not just the vertical depth, but also the breadth, the skill sets that you equip the students with. And how do you go about doing that? It's easier said than done, but actually to have a true competency approach to education is a major challenge. Experimenting also, so both the content of the programs, the competency content of the training of the students, and also the pedagogies that you use. For example, a design approach to education where students and faculty together work on a problem, they conceptualize the approach to solving that problem, and so on and so forth. We need to innovate. We cannot do business as usual, in general, in higher education in general. Again, really, the Doha Institute is a unique place. It has a mission, and it focuses on the humanities and social sciences, but I think these types of issues facing higher education in general will apply to all of us in all types of institutions. Another thing that we need to work on, and I'm jumping, I'm really moving fast. Yes. Another thing that we need to think of is, and this is extremely important, and I'm acting on it. I'm speaking from experience. Is continuing education. In today's world, the student graduates and changes careers. It depends on the country, anywhere from 10 to 15 times in a lifetime, and probably is going to get more with the new technologies that are being deployed. The degree that you get will only take you so far. It'll be sufficient for a couple of years, and then the market will demand new skills. There will be new issues that you need to work on, and so on and so forth, which means that continuing education beyond the degree, is absolutely essential. We cannot just teach students to get one degree. We need to create, to shape an aptitude which in our graduating students, so that they become lifelong learners, so that they're equipped, ready to continue studying after they get their degree. So 2 or 3 years later, they come in and they continue to study, and we need to create the mechanisms, the apparatus for providing this type of continuing education, because it is needed, and if we don't provide people with it, they become obsolete. It's that simple. They really don't have the skills to operate in the new market and address the demands of the new market. So what we have, relevance and up-to-datedness of academic programs. They have the problem of skepticism about the value of higher education. There is an issue that you refer to, which is the question of, up till the mid-50s of the last century, the whole Arab world had about 50 universities. And one of them is this problematic university. About 50 universities. Now there are more than 1,400 universities in the Arab world. So, which is a good thing. The region is investing in building knowledge economies. But the focus has been on, and not everywhere, and there are, of course, very notable exceptions, but the focus has been on absorbing the problem of quantity, not quality. Now we have the challenge of quality. And then there is also the challenge of the transformations around us that we need to adapt to. So quality versus volume. Education beyond the degree is very important. People, innovation, both in content and delivery modality, then the financial pressures, which I started with, because they're always, if you're an administrator, it's always a primary thing for you. The aptitude inculcated in the students, we train, and their readiness for instability and for the future. And keeping up with the rapid changes in society and higher education. To do all of this, universities must overcome the usual inertia that we are accustomed to avoid becoming obsolete. And then there are two major problems that you will ask me about later. One is AI. I have so much to say about AI. I know we all do, but I would like a chance to talk about AI. That's a major challenge facing us. We are all playing catch-up when it comes to AI. Most of what we know about AI, we learned from science fiction movies and from our kids who are using it. Honestly, I'm not joking. I mean, we're not in the driver's seat. We're all trying, no matter how advanced we are, we're trying to play catch up. And this is true of the best universities all over the globe. So this is a major challenge that we need the strategy to deal with. And then the last and probably most important challenge, in my view, is the persistent systematic erosion of the autonomy of higher education. I really think this is the biggest challenge for facing higher education as we knew it is under threat, under very serious threat. So I hope you will ask me about these two things later, as you promised.
I promise.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sure there will be overlap with similar themes. But I'll get back to you on these two issues for sure, because we all need to know what's going on from your vantage point as well. I'll turn to Professor Wanchikun. You've been deeply engaged in building research capacity across Africa, where we're witnessing rapid growth in enrollment as well, and a growing commitment to developing research agendas that are locally rooted and responsive to local needs, rather than reliant on framework from somewhere else. As someone who has studied African history, I do follow some news on also higher education, the African continent. I'm aware of some really impressive initiatives. And now my question to you is that as a scholar based in the United States, but closely connected to African institutions, how are the broader shifts that also President Dalal tackled in his response? How are those broader shifts happening in the global academy affecting universities in Africa and higher education, more specifically in terms of whether delivery, the mission of the institution, and what kind of new pressures and opportunities are emerging for African higher education in this changing landscape? And I'm sure when we discuss what's going on in the African continent, whatever is happening resonates with us as well in the region. We're deeply connected, we have similar issues, and at some level we might have similar infrastructures that we need to deal with. So looking forward to your responses.
Okay, so first,
It's a great pleasure to be here. Okay, it's a wonderful pleasure to be here. And thanks for the Institute for inviting me. So I'm really deeply optimistic about the future of higher education in Africa. And this is based on my personal experience. I mean, first, I was born from a very poor family, central Benin. I left my country with a high school degree, was in 87. And 9 years later, I became professor at Yale University. So I went to the US, and I went to Canada first, and I managed to convince them to get me to do a master's without an undergraduate degree, and I did. I went to a PhD program. While the average time to finish a PhD is 5 years, I finished in 2 years and 9 months. So more recently, I have 2 students from my school, African School of Economics, who left Africa 7 years ago. 7. One is now professor at New York University, and one is a professor at Dartmouth College. And I have many others, for instance, who are have leading positions in African universities, African Development Bank, and so on. So if you provide the opportunity and you give people ambition and drive, miracle can take place. You know, so, and having said that, the shift in higher education that we observe, instead of seeing this as a challenge, I think we should see this as an opportunity. I mean, first, science, AI in particular. Now, AI can allow us to provide the technical capacity to universities to deliver better education, to do better research. Like, for instance, currently, you know, as an economic historian, I have a lot of projects in economic history where I use information, archival information, from 19th century, 18th century. And I could only use 10% of the information because I'm doing everything by hands. Now, I can use almost everything. You know, with a button, I can be able to communicate much more effectively with the past. Because, you know, like, you can develop tools that allow interactive, you know, learning about the past, you know. So, agriculture, for instance, you know, the development of precision agriculture have transformed completely Brazil, a place like one of the leading agricultural miracles in the history of the world. If you also look at the leapfrogging of China in electrical vehicle, and you see, for instance, many small countries where people can use the new technology to produce results that were impossible in the past, you know. And the second opportunity is mobility. You know, you can be in a tiny place in Africa and communicate with labs and universities around the world. But then the challenge there is not to wait for the opportunity to come to you, is to go for it. That means, for instance, individual scientists can play a major role. Not universities, not Ministry of Education. You know, today, if you are at a local university in Lagos or in Malawi, you can communicate with a partner at Harvard, at Princeton. You know, if you have enough drive, enough initiative, you can actually communicate. You know, and with exchange program, for instance, you can allow students from small universities to go abroad for 6 months and 5 months and so on. So now, And the third thing, what's also very important, is the fact that students, African students in particular, are becoming more and more ambitious and driven. And I come from Benin, a tiny country. One of the top mathematicians in the world, who just got into American Academy of Sciences in mathematics. He's from my country. He's from Benin. One of the top robotics is from my country. He's from Benin. But then if you talk to any of these people, they are crazy people. They want to be at the top. They are driven. They are looking for opportunities. So I think that the opportunities are there. But if we have enough ambition, enough drive, and we provide opportunities for younger people to have access, to those resources, great things, will happen. So, for me, the current landscape, in fact, is an opportunity for us. It's an opportunity for Africans to leapfrog, and that maybe later on I'm going to talk about my university that I set up. I set up the university with $5,000. Did you hear me? $5,000, 2004. And if you look at the school, it looked like a primary school, in terms of building. From that place, I placed 80 students in PhD around in the US. Among those two, the one that I'm teaching and so on. Why? Because the curriculum is simple: math, statistics, economic history, research experience. So obviously. So what the point I want to make here is that it's really, really, really important that we develop develop academic entrepreneurship. We need faculty, we need university leaders to be very, very entrepreneurial, and to be able to be more self-reliant, taking initiatives, because if we wait for our leaders, we are going to wait too long. You might just want to take the matter in your own hands. Now, the other challenge that we talk about is financing, But then, because our government do not spend enough on research and education. Like, for instance, from some data that I heard, African government spend something like 1.1% budget in research and development, which is crazy, And even private corporations don't invest in research, So the real challenge is changing culture. We need to get everyone to believe that progress is science. Development is not money first, it's knowledge first. Knowledge first, money second or third. So we need to embrace universities, support universities forcefully if we want to develop. We need to be global participants to knowledge development as opposed to be recipients. In South African countries, we are still importing alcohol. Like, alcohol is imported. My high school can create alcohol, can make alcohol, So we need to sort of question, these choices that are being made, and the fact that we are not basically investing and taking research, very, very, very seriously. And understand that we have talent, local talent, that just need support. There is an institute in my home country, Benin, and also there are similar institutes across Africa, where they develop drones and AI in precision agriculture. If you look at the place where we are developing those technologies, you are not going to believe it. So for me, money is changing culture. Money is important, but changing culture where we trust our science, we support them. That's very important. But then, in terms of money, there are also, we should not be relying on tuition. We should be relying on research, commercialization. We should produce stuff that help us to make money, in universities. And this is the new direction that my university is taking, which is they are developing major entrepreneurship venture on campus, So university is making more money by commercializing research, by also setting innovation-driven startup on campus, So I think turning to entrepreneurship, commercializing research beside tuition, I think it's the way to go. In the social science, public policy, for instance, it's crazy how little we use our university for consulting. We go to Deloitte, we go to those places where a lot of money is being spent, while we have local with the talent, with the resources, the knowledge, the drive to do this kind of work. So trusting our universities, developing entrepreneurship on campus, getting them to be more self-reliant financially, I think it's the way to go. So to summarize, I think that the change in the world should make us more optimistic because of the value of mobility, because the fact that science and technology, particularly AI, is becoming more and more democratic to some degree, and the fact that our young people, in the right set of conditions, they are really ambitious. So, and that's the ambition that led me to believe, nearly, 35 years ago, that I could get a PhD from the US without an undergraduate degree, So, and I think many Africans have this kind of mindset, and we need to really push them in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate the optimism and the belief in a better future for higher education in the African continent. I'll turn to Professor Jing. Certainly, China has been stealing the limelight on several fronts, including its higher education, which has expanded at unprecedented speed, guided by a strong national vision that links knowledge to development and the global competitiveness. What are, in your opinion, the most significant transformations taking place in Chinese academia today? And how are institutions navigating the balance between government leadership and academic autonomy? I know you like this question, right, related to autonomy. And also between national priorities and the global engagement.
Yeah, thank you, Irma, for this great question. First, my warm congratulations on the 10th anniversary of the Doha Institute. We're very proud to have you as our global partner. And actually, we have so many interactions even this year. I think this is the third time for us to meet. The first time in Hong Kong, second time here, then this time again here. And next month, we are going to invite Professor Hamid Ali to Fudan University for the third China Arab Forum on Global Development Governance. So I believe this kind of frequent contacts between us will create some chemical reactions. I mean, we will have deeper cooperation between us. So thank you for this invitation. And just now you mentioned the higher education achievements of China in the past decades. That progress has been really amazing. I think something comparable to the so-called China economic miracle. Yeah. In this century, from 2000 till now, I think the higher education of China has get through three stages, from elite higher education to mass higher education to universal education. So the chance of young people to access the university system has increased significantly. Now we have about 3,000 universities and colleges, and we have about 43 million students studying in our campuses. So that means for every 5 university students in the world, one of them is studying in China. And every year we deliver about 10 million graduates to the job market. So that creates a kind of very important foundation for continuous economic growth and innovation of China. And at the same time, quality and diversity has been increasing, and China has been trying to change ourselves from a big country of higher education to a strong country of higher education. For example, some Chinese universities like Peking University, Tsinghua University, and even Fudan University, we are not just the top universities in China, we are also the top universities in the world according to some, to many global rankings. And I think starting from 2016, publications by Chinese scholars in SSI index journals, the technical articles, already became #1 in number. And I think in 2019, the number of applications for patents in China became #1 since that time. And the diversity has also improved. For example, now female students account for the majority of university students in China. And even at the PhD level, I think the female students are exceeding male students in the near future. So that's a great change of the structure. I think to achieve all these achievements, there are some important reasons. Some are China unique, some are actually consistent with countries in Global South. For example, we have a continuous economic growth since our reform opened up in 1978. In 2010, China became the second largest economic entity, surpassing that of Japan. And especially in recent years, the digital economy has been booming in China. Now, digital economy accounts for about half of the national economy. With that, the innovation capacities of enterprises have increased a lot. For example, we have our BAS, BATH, that's Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent, and Huawei. The US counterpart is GAFA, Google, Apple, Facebook, and Amazon. So for these enterprises and for the Chinese economy, they are in need of high quality human capital. And they are also in need of high quality universities. And I think another very important factor to explain our expansion of higher education is that our traditional emphasis on education. Thousands of years ago, China had that kind of emphasis on education. And 1,500 years ago, the Asian dynasties, the Sui dynasty, began to use written exams to test the educated young people and to select them to be the government officials. Especially at the time of knowledge economy of today, so both the families and the government think that education is the best way to enhance individual competence and national competence. So this is the most profitable investment. So this explains that why the Chinese families as well as the governments do that many education investments. A big portion of our family investments is for education. I think the third factor to explain that is globalization. China now is the biggest country to export international students to other countries. I think now we have a bit more than 1 million students studying abroad in the universities and colleges. And Chinese universities have built up all kinds of collaborative relations with international universities, of course, especially the Western universities. At the beginning, of course, this kind of cooperative relation was not so equal. Basically, we have a role as a kind of learner and follower. But along with the increase of the capacity of Chinese higher education system, our independent innovation capacities have been increasing, so we gradually attract back our students and scholars from overseas. Because at the beginning, basically, it's kind of brain drain. Our talents went to other countries like US to study there, then to work there. But now we can get them back, by a lot of talent programs. And also at the same time, China became a very important country to receive international students. So we are beginning to contribute to a global higher education system. And the last factor I want to emphasize is that the policies, the role played by the government, as Amar just said. So the Chinese government first advanced our basic education and secondary education. We have the biggest basic education system in the world. So that creates the student supply and also demand for higher education and high quality higher education. And the Chinese government continuously to push forward reform and development the higher education system to make it fit the needs of national development. For example, in 1990s, the Chinese government decided to expand our higher education system to build new universities and to expand the size of enrollments. At the same time, it aims high. So, for example, since 1980s, the Chinese government continuously announced new programs like 211 program, like the Line 85 program. And a decade ago, it proposed the double first class program. It means first class disciplines and first class universities. So it's double first class. So with the guidance from the government, also with the investment, a lot of investment, enormous, from government, China, pushes our universities to move toward, the global top universities. So I think I very much agree with your idea. I mean, the Chinese government has played a very important role, sometimes a central role, in the development of higher education. But we can observe that this role has been changing from government-led to government-guided. So actually, our model is a kind of government-guided hybrid model. So that model integrates, of course, the governments from central to local, the universities, the enterprises, the families, students, and also our global partners to try to create that kind of synergy for the development of higher education in China. So in my idea, the role of Chinese government is not direct management. The role is to develop strategic directions, to implement strategic management. We set goals, then we create strategies to realize these goals, to try to create and maintain an open, fair, and competitive environment, to try to make sure the supply of resources, for example, our presidents just talk about financial difficulties. We do have that. Chinese government has been making it the priority to do investment in the universities, but also encourage the presidents to diversify their fiscal revenues and try to coordinate the different stakeholders to work with each other. So to summarize, I think the Chinese higher education model just reflects the so-called East Asia development model, or the so-called Beijing consensus. So that means when the foundation of development or the foundation of the higher education is still very weak, we try to rely on the capacities of the strong state to realize coordination and continuous development. And for example, now we just discussed AI. AI has imposed, of course, opportunities, but many challenges to the universities because AI fundamentally changes the way for us to produce knowledge, to evaluate knowledge, to disseminate and share knowledge, and to apply the knowledge. So as a knowledge platform, the university have to adapt. The Chinese government, quite early noticed the importance of AI and created national strategies to encourage adoption, the innovative and responsible use of AI in the universities. And for university in China, because the top university, public university, so we also quickly make our own strategies. For example, for Fudan University, we have the AI for science, AI for social science, and also AI for education strategies. So in that way, we try to make use of so-called late mover advantages to build the excellent Chinese universities. But as you mentioned, of course, this kind of balance, the government, the state, has to be cautious, has to be dynamic. It makes policies, but it has to be agile to carefully look at what's going on to do adjustments. For example, the quick expansion of Chinese university also creates some problems. There can be a mismatch between the students cultivated and the demands from market. Yeah, of course, there's always that kind of problem. So we need to have agile governance. The government has to realize that it's not omnipotent. That kind of government-guided, hybrid model has to be, adapt to the changing reality step by step. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your input. I think you said there 1 million Chinese students are studying abroad. That's the number. And this begs the question that we can discuss later of how global knowledge is being shaped and transferred from one context to another, which is the theme of our session anyway. I would like to turn to President Abdul Wahab. You've been here for 10 years. You've witnessed many changes in higher education across the region and within the Doha Institute itself. How have they been shaping the Institute's academic identity, governance, and approaches to knowledge production?
Okay, shukran jazilan. I'll try to be brief, starting from the central issue of this theme, which is exchange of knowledge, production exchange. I mean, the challenge usually for us in the Institute or in other words is to produce worthwhile knowledge. And I think although we have been successful in producing and publishing, we maybe need to look at where we can make our knowledge more relevant. Sometimes you just publish because the internal process of the discipline drive you into that direction. And at the moment, I think we have a challenge in social sciences and humanities of having to be relevant, especially in the humanities. Sometimes we find our colleagues or even ourselves held or trapped into conversations which are sometimes very narrowly discipline specific. Questions about methodology, for example, in political science especially, there has been very long questions, debates about methodology, what is quantitative, what is qualitative, whether to be, whether this is conservative or this is progressive. And they themselves become a preoccupation of the people of the discipline. They rehearse them and regurgitate, and so we need to see how relevant this is to the community, to the wider community. So this goes to another step of research, which is dissemination. You might write a very erudite article in a journal, which is read by 100 or 200 people. And whether this is useful or not, whether it's being cited by your colleagues, you need to tell the other people what this means for the community. But a broader issue, I think, about the issue of exchange and is that we have contradictory issues. Sometimes publication and production of knowledge is meant to reach everybody, but there are also let's say barriers for this. Valuable knowledge people do not want to share, especially if it to do with technology, with things which can be sold. Even sometimes the publications themselves, copyright. I want to circulate if I don't get money out of it, or if I don't get use out of it. So we have even in the publication process itself, kind of contradiction. Do I want to let you to give you this knowledge, or do I want to keep it? Do I want to give it for value, for reciprocation, or not? And so we have to rethink how we fund, produce the mechanisms which are now in common about how to make knowledge available and to make it meaningful. These are two challenges. But I will go back to a point which I think was raised by Ahmed about innovation. For example, the idea of Doha Institute was an innovation. The founders have innovated in the concept, in the way it has been implemented. But now we need to think more innovatively in change of the challenges now facing us. And the challenges facing higher education are quite numerous, but I will stop, for example, about the issue of availability. I don't want to speak about costs or these things, but about, at the moment, there has been, for example, in Australia and other places, issue of student non-attendance. Students do not want to come to classes, especially these days with technologies available. They would like to have knowledge delivered to their place. They want, for example, to work. We have a challenge here in Doha Institute where people are working or have other things, and sometimes cannot attend. At the moment, we have severe punishment for people who do not attend. Also, the regulations of the Ministry of Education say that knowledge has been delivered in person. You cannot do it. So here we have challenges of innovation and regulations. I think we have to think more seriously about if you want to make knowledge available outside the institute, or for people who are not able to attend all time. This is something we have, I think, the technologies are there. Maybe they are not perfect. Well, we can still, instead of, for example, teaching 300 students or 500 students, we can teach thousands. If we believe our knowledge is good and valuable and want to make it available for more, we have to think about, is this an option? Is this an option for us? Again, here we have the contradiction between regulation and innovation. I'll stop here.
You're certainly pushing us to think about different models of knowledge production and delivery. But some of the issues you mentioned make a nice transition back to you, President Ahmed, because I know you want to talk about AI and university autonomy. And if possible, if we also can think while you discuss these topics, the impact of AI on knowledge production. For example, will AI give us or give the world or make knowledge more accessible or not? because there is a discussion, there is a conversation going on whether AI will open up, knowledge to the rest of the world. But in what ways, that's something. Yes, I'll leave that to you. Thank you.
Thank you. As I said earlier, AI, it's not a question of if, it's a question of how. And all the issues that we need to think through, including what you talked about. I mean, does it actually provide an opportunity for better knowledge production? Of course, it does provide an opportunity, assuming that we put in place certain mechanisms and so on. Look, the first thing about AI is upon us. It's a reality of the world in which AI is already reshaping the world in which we live. There is no doubt about that. In universities and higher education institutions, and there are many other issues elsewhere, of course, but in higher education institutions, our students are using AI, our faculty are using AI, some of our staff are using AI, there are presentations that are created using AI. And again, this is a reality that we have to deal with. So let me talk about a few things, I'll try to be quick. A few things that I think that we're trying to work on and at AUC that I know that many other universities are trying to work on in different levels. I know that the institute, the Doha Institute, we just went over a policy yesterday on AI, and it's quite a good policy. The first thing that we need to do, AI is a reality of the world in which we live. We need to educate our community on the use of AI, on the responsible use of AI. And I'll talk about, I don't want to start by the ethical responsible, but the ethical and responsible are extremely important, and I'll say why. But let me start first with the basic things that require tremendous amount of work that we need to work on so that we can deal with the reality of AI in the world in which we live. We need to decide, first of all, we need to train our community on the use of AI, the responsible use, and I'll come back to that point in a minute. We need, in all universities, there are basic competencies that are required. Language competencies are required, computational competencies are required, mathematical computational competencies. Now we have to have AI competencies. In the world in which we live, all students, every single student in the university need to have a basic level of competency in AI to be able to operate in the world. So we need to create courses that are required across the board from all of our students. Now, of course, the first challenge that you face when you do this is the course that you introduce today will become obsolete in a month or two. And then, so the course, it's not an easy task. I know for a fact, because I'm working on this, we're working on this. It's not an easy task to design a course that is evolving, that is dynamic. By its very nature, it's a course that keeps on changing. There are universities that are doing this, and we need to do this. We need to introduce, it's not easy to introduce a course, impose it on the full university. You have to go through the Senate, and the Senate has to approve it, and so on, because the Senate is the custodian of the academic curriculum. It's not easy to take a course from the full set of requirements and impose it, but we have to. We have to introduce basic competencies in AI for the whole universities. Then we have to integrate components of AI in an increasing number of additional courses. You have to encourage people and to help them introduce AI into the course, aside from the basic requirement which is required from everyone, and aside from the training courses which are introduced to the whole campus community, faculty, students, but also staff, by the way. Then you have to decide on the in-depth courses in AI that you want to introduce, depending on the university and what it teaches and so on. You don't just need basic competencies. You don't just need mechanisms for integration of AI components in courses and increasing number of courses, but you also need to decide on the in-depth courses in AI. And this issue has to do so much with the question of ethical and responsible use of AI and the biases and inequities in AI. Why do you need in-depth courses? Because it's very easy to use AI. Well, I think it's very easy. From the research that I've done, from everyone's use of it, it's very easy to use AI. It's becoming easier and easier. The different platforms are becoming easier and easier to use. It's very easy, in other words, to be a consumer of AI. But to be a producer of AI is a different story altogether. And we're not producers of AI. We need people who create AI, who work on the algorithms, who can actually be in the driver's seat. We cannot just be consumer. You know, when I studied engineering, we were trained to be consumers of engineering. This is why I shifted from engineering to the humanities and did something else. Because I was trained to do a particular job and repeat it and perfect it, but I was trained as a consumer, not as a producer, not as a researcher. We have to produce AI. And if we don't, already people everywhere talk about data bias in AI. Our share in the global data, which is now being analyzed so efficiently, you know, so remarkably by AI tools and platforms, our share of data is non-existent, is minimal. As Arabs, yes, our region, no matter what language you use, you know, you can translate it. Now you can use AI to translate it to English. Yes, it's minimal. It's much less than that, Doctor. We can talk about that. Yes. You know, we have, this means data bias. This means that we're outside the data, which is now powerfully being analyzed. We're not part of it. We're, you know, there is a tool which is being evolved, which is being developed, and we're completely outside. We're just consumers of that tool. We have no role in developing it. This is a major problem of equity. It's not just plagiarism. Plagiarism is an issue we have to deal with in universities. We are educational institutions after all, but it's not only that. It's really the much bigger, the data bias. How do you train the algorithms? How do you train the machines and the data? And how do you contribute data to the I mean, you know, by the way, you know, we talk about the power of AI in research. Absolutely, the power of AI. I mean, AI is already revolutionizing the possibilities of research. Google is a form of AI. But you know what the difference between Google and the current platforms of AI? Google enabled you behind, you know, while sitting on your desk to access massive tons of information, but then you had to read it. You had to read the information that you had access to. Now someone else reads it for you. Someone else analyzes it for you. Someone else gives you the answer. So the real challenge of AI and the ethical use of AI, one, there is the question of bias and contributing to the production of AI, not just the consumption of AI. And two, there is the question of AI that will supplement and enhance our ability to think, or AI that will replace our ability to think. We are in the business of shaping minds. And some of our students are no longer using their minds. There is this famous MIT study now. Of course, I'm sure people will debate it, but it's a very rigorous study. It has shown beyond an iota of doubt that people who are using AI, the neural activity in their brain is going down tremendously. The brains people are not using their brains anymore. The actual neural signals in the brain go down by more than, you know, to less than half when people are frequently, because it's not active, because you do not use it. So the question is, are we using, is this tool going to replace the human mind and replace human jobs and, or is it going to supplement? It is a reality. We have to deal with it. We have to understand it. We have to deploy it. But how you deploy it is extremely important. We have to, you know, as I said, in academia, we have to introduce new courses, new required courses, integrated in addition in an increasing number. You know, a problem that we have at AUC, we've designed courses with AI components. The departments are not allowing the faculty to teach these courses. I have to interfere to force the departments to allow the faculty members who design courses with AI component, because they say, what's in it for us? You know, you're taking away from our needed courses. It's understandable, but you know, there are institutional hurdles and so on that you have to overcome, but these are small. The bigger questions are, you know, we have to introduce, to train our community, we have to introduce required courses, we have to integrate AI in an increased number of courses, we have to design in-depth specialized courses so that we are not just consumers, we are also beginning to think of ourselves as producers, and we have to do all of that responsibly. We have to enter data. We have to be, if you don't have people who don't know how to create the algorithms, how are you going to enter data? There are these geeks who are sitting behind machines and entering the data, and we're not part of that process. We don't have these geeks. We need to train them, you know, and on and on. Of course, the potential of AI, it's not a question. The potential of AI is already tremendous, and everyone is using it. But how do we go about it, and how do we develop strategies, comprehensive strategies, for training in AI, introduction in AI across the board in our research, in our data research? I mean, using AI for institutional research so that our decisions within the university are data-driven. That's another thing that that's quite clearly AI is going to be instrumental in. And there are jobs that will be removed. How do you admissions? And it will help you with admissions. It will help you keep in touch with your students. I mean, the uses of AI within higher education are tremendous, but the challenges are also big. And there is, hiring people who are experts in AI. You know how much these people cost? They cost a huge amount of money. You have to have the budget to actually build the capacity, the infrastructure, but also the human capacity to be able to train people in AI. Again, it's all easier said than done. And the easiest part is consuming it. But we are in higher education. We are not in the business of consumption. We are in the business of shaping minds. And the question is, how do we shape minds with AI being a dominant factor in higher education as we know it today?
I can come back to you on the issue of autonomy, but I think with what you said, you're touching on a very recurrent theme in higher education in the Arab region, which is, where is our agency in the global setting, right? And AI is raising this question again for us. And with that, I would like to turn to Professor Wanchikan and ask, again, from your work between the USA and the African continent, how can universities in what we call the global south, I know it's controversial, but I'll use it because we're talking about the Arab region, about the African continent, about China, how can they reclaim intellectual agency given what's going on in terms of the changes we're discussing? And how can those universities shape global research agendas on their own terms?
Yeah, okay. So thank you very much. So as I said earlier, we are already producing AI. I mentioned this institute in Benin that top level in terms of African languages and also precision agriculture. Like, for instance, as part of my school, we are setting up what I call cultural space, where we are going to have AI-driven study of African culture. And so what I'm saying is already happening. And young people are moving faster than we think. And with collaboration, we can actually make it cheaper, more effective. And so I think that's, having made that point, I think that it's really, really, really important to develop partnerships between university and Global South. For instance, my school, we are developing partnership with Lahore University of Management Science. We are super strong in engineering. We are very strong in economics. We are trying to collaborate. We have Indian Statistical Institute, where we have a colleague there who is in applied math, and hopefully, we can develop partnership with Fudan University. I have one of my former students who is trying to work on that. So what I'm saying is that what I think we have to make this faculty-led. It cannot just be MOU between universities where we have fancy languages, we need to work together for the better of the world. No, you get, somebody work in physics or work in economics at an university, connecting with a colleague from a foreign university in the Global South. They write together a research proposal, they get funding for it, and it's done. And then the university benefit directly from these kind of initiatives. So we need to decentralize partnerships between universities and in the Global South. I think that's very important. Given the limitation that currently exist in accessing European university, American university, Canadian universities, I think these partnerships are really, really super important. But again, we have to encourage our faculty to take those initiatives. We may have facilitators in the north, like somebody like me and other colleagues, to help match, faculty in the south with faculty in the north, and so on. I think this is the future. Now, something that also needs to stop is the culture of extractive research. Basically, you have some faculty or even graduate students from the US with some money, and they come in and they hire even senior faculty from the south, from the global south, as more or less assistants. You help them with the data, you help them with, and you barely have your name on the research, because they feel like they own your research or they own your work by paying you. I remember like 2 years or 3 years ago, I tried to set up a partnership between Institut Pasteur, a biomedical institute in Côte d'Ivoire, and an institute in the US. And I was shocked that the people in Côte d'Ivoire didn't want it. Because they say, okay, we are going to come, take our sample and leave and do the work, and we'll barely see our name on the work being done. This is a serious issue that needs to be addressed. That's actually one of the reasons why we need to further strengthen South-South collaboration. But another point that I think is very important is to get, our faculty, our scientists to be ambitious, not just to want to make some money to buy the next car. Come on. You are a PhD, there are problems, there are serious problems. Use this problem as inspiration. If you don't have the resources, you don't have a connection, try to find them. I'm not saying that this is the case everywhere, but I think we need to develop, as you mentioned, like more agency, more drive, more autonomy, and I think our university administration can help us in that direction. And governments in particular, and private sector, can also help by giving us contract. As I mentioned earlier, there are some African governments that use foreign consulting firm while they have, a local staff institute that's far more qualified to do the work. Those little things adds up and explain why, for instance, those universities and research centers are underfunded, why our scientists don't have the ambition required. So I think the key for me, let me summarize what I said. 3 things. I think it's really important to decentralize South-South collaboration. It's not about, like an university in Cairo and an university in Brazil. It's better if, for instance, a lab within the university collaborate directly with a lab at the University of Recife in Brazil, so that they know what they are doing, they have agency, and the university help to coordinate and to strengthen this collaboration. The second thing is to develop, to go aggressive, to get the government, for instance, to trust and to support local researchers and scientists by giving them government contracts, by getting private sector, private corporation to work with them, instead of using foreign scientists who barely know the place, And then another thing is also to go aggressively against extractive culture, where, scientists from the north just come and pick up information sample from the south, produce research on their own without trying to develop any capacity domestically. Last not least, something that I think is going to be very helpful is what I call innovation conditionality. We shouldn't be allowing investors from abroad to be using 19th century technology to do the work that they want to do in our place. Get them to say, okay, you are not establishing a company if you are not using, latest technology, if you're not training local scientists to do the work. If you are not developing, local kind of capacity in technology, and also international finance organizations like World Bank, European Development Bank, for instance, when they are making loan to business people, they have to say, well, it's great that you're trying to create jobs in Malawi, but come on, you need to at least 10% investment in research and development. Because for the long term, this is what is going to stay. This is what's going to matter. So for me, this is how I see the collaboration, the South-South collaboration, and developing, agency in the global South. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure this resonates with other regions as well. I would like to turn to Professor Jing. Given your work with the Arab region and the collaboration you've established, what kind of shared research agendas do you see emerging between China and the Arab region that reflect priorities for research for both regions?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think this is a very important topic. The knowledge exchange, knowledge sharing, joint research between China and the Arab region. As a matter of fact, historically, China and the Arab region had very good channels of cultural and technological exchange, especially through the Silk Road that connected both sides. I think in the modern time, due to the colonial invasion and also due to the establishment of a new global order, this kind of very healthy, very constructive interactions between the two parts were interrupted. But great thing is that since People's Republic of China was built, then all kinds of new ways, new forms of knowledge exchange between the two parts were established. For example, in late 1950s, China began to receive Arab students to study in Chinese universities. At that time, we didn't have so-called scholarship of today, but we did make that free for Arab students, and we offered the living stipends. And in the 1960s, the Chinese government sent our medical teams to Arab countries, for example, Algeria and Morocco. But in general, I think, because both of us are Global South countries, so basically for that kind of knowledge exchange, we learn from the global laws. So even if the research cooperation, technological cooperation between two sides were increasing, but still the most important thing is to learn from the global laws countries. But in this century, situation has changed. In this century, situation has changed fully. Both of us achieved a lot of economic progress, and actually China became the #1 economic partner of the majority of Arab countries. And also the political connections have been so important. So that makes us to reconsider the importance of knowledge exchange between us. So for example, higher education cooperation has become one major component of South-South cooperation. It's also one major component of China's Belt Road initiative. Now I think in China we have more than 20,000 Arab students studying in Chinese universities and college. And I think for Chinese students studying in Arab universities, the number has been increasing, and we have about a bit more than 3,000 students here in Arab universities. And of course, immigration from China to the Arab countries like Qatar and UAE has been increasing very fast. So after President Xi visited Saudi Arabia in 2022 to have the 3 summits, one is the China-Saudi Arabia Summit, one is the China Gulf States Summit, another is China-Arab Summit. So higher education cooperation between the two sides, move into a kind of fast track. And for my idea, I think, at least from the China side, there are some very important and very favorable factors to increase cultural and research exchange cooperation between us. As the first factor is that, or first upgrade is that China emphasizes that higher education cooperation is our global responsibility. Yeah. So China believes that higher education cooperation, especially cooperation with global South countries, is one way for China to provide global public goods. And China proposes the idea of the so-called the human community of common destiny. Okay, with that kind of idea, we have the moral obligation to do better education cooperation with global South countries. So just in this early September, China proposed the idea of global governance initiative. So we are not promoting decoupling or de-risking. We are still highly enthusiastic about global cooperation. We are still directed by globalization and globalism. So I think that kind of idea, the human community or common destiny, creates that kind of moral obligation for China to provide better higher education and better knowledge to global South countries. That's one very important factor. I think another factor is that we have changed our idea of higher education cooperation from assistance to South-South cooperation. So that means it's not kind of one direction given. It's not just we give you the knowledge, give you the money and the capacities, and you implement. It's kind of interactive process because we recognize that for global problems, we have to do things together. So for China and other global South countries, we need to co-identify the problems, co-identify the goals. We need to co-design, co-produce, and co-create the values, and of course, share the values. So we recognize that global South countries are the indispensable partner of China to cope with these global challenges. So the South-South cooperation idea is also very important. So we don't just do mutual learning, actually we do collaborative innovation. And the third important factor is that China emphasizes the global South countries, or just global South, as an entity of knowledge sovereignty. So because of our economic miracle, so China has developed that confidence. We can be the source of knowledge production, knowledge creation. So the very important thing is that in today's China, in the universities, we talk about two things. Of course, one is AI, okay. Another thing is the so-called autonomous knowledge system. In Chinese, it's 自主知识体系, especially for social sciences. I'm a professor of social science. So we are not talking about autonomous knowledge system. Okay. So it's not a kind of knowledge nationalism. Okay. It just means, okay, now we don't just rely on the knowledge provided by the global North. Of course, we make use of them, we integrate them, but we look at our own development, our own realities, our own methodologies to try to make use of these practices to work with global South countries to develop theories and knowledge that can better explain what's happening in China and what's happening in other parts of global South. And I believe to do that, that's very ambitious. We have to work with other global South countries to change today's unequal global knowledge structure, because we know, for best universities, for best scholars, best research institutions, they are in the global North. But we need to do things to collective change that kind of situation. Okay, so I believe for these three factors, they create kind of very favorable context for China to work with our countries to exchange knowledge. But this is a general environment. Exactly. Concretely, how can we put the universities, the schools and departments, the professors and students, the research institutes together? We need to have the best examples, the best practices. And for that, I believe we already have some very nice examples. For example, a few years ago, the Association of Arab Universities, Professor Salama is Secretary General of this association, and also the China Association of Higher Education. They co-established the so-called China Arab University 10+10 scheme to engage universities from both sides to work together to do joint research, to do knowledge exchange. Fudan University is a leading Chinese university in the area of public policy. So we have done a lot with our colleagues, for example, with DI. So I believe there are many existing great examples. And the good thing is that the important thing is that ARU and the Chinese associations and other institutions need to disseminate this kind of knowledge.
And I think
show-
we'll get the chance to hear more about those initiatives in the next session, actually. Yeah.
Yes. So
Thank
to
you.
show to the Chinese and Harvard University how meaningful, how useful this kind of collaboration can be.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. There is much food for thought during the session. I'm sure we can continue the conversation in different ways. I know maybe the audience expects to have a QA session now, but there's a slight change in the program. And we'll, if you can keep your questions also for the next session, and then after the next session is over, we can have questions. Our guests will stay with us, I believe, also during the next session. And Dr. Abdul Wahab, I'll get back to you in the next session as well. Ahmed, if you have anything else to add, we'll have another chance. Thank you again. That was very fruitful. And hopefully to see you again.
Thank you.
And thank you.